SACTA te praat en wat SACTA alles behels. En ek gaan vir Andrew Bennett vra om vir ons 'n aanbieding te gee oor SACTA. En dan gaan ons 'n bietjie van 'n vraag en antwoord sessie daarna, waar almal kan inkom en gesels, en dis Engels en Afrikaans. Ons het agtergekom, hier's baie Afrikaanse sprekendes in hierdie gebied, maar ek dink oor die algemeen kan ons albei tale goed akkommodeer. Ek wil net voorstel, op my linkerkant is Hendrik van Staden, hy is die saadhoof van Syngenta. Andries Gous, 'n boer. Andries Strons, jammer. 'n boer van die ander kant van die berg. Dan Sandile Mhlanga, hy is ons transformasiebestuurder by SACTA. En dan Andrew Bennett, wat die hoofuitvoerende beampte van SACTA is. So Andrew, ek dink ons sal jou aan die woord stel. En jy kan sommer begin.
Baie dankie, Dion. As ek net die presentation kan kry. Thank you. I'm going to do the English part of this presentation. So I'd like to give a brief background on SACTA and show you how we utilize the levies, as well as what those levy amounts are. And then towards the end of the presentation, just have a look at the impact of SACTA, which I hope will then lead to the further discussion. So firstly, SACTA is a non-profit company. It's run according to the Companies Act, which is amended from time to time. But our main responsibility is the administration of statutory levies on certain self-pollinated grain crops. So we collect the levy, we distribute the levy to seed companies, and we also deploy the transformation funds that are associated with that levy. The main purpose of the levy is to support breeding programs, which hopefully result in the development of new varieties, and also assist in bringing or trying to facilitate the adoption of new technologies within these self-pollinating crops. The second part of our levy gets deployed to transformation, and in this field we spend most of our money on enterprise development, also skills and training development, as well as socio-economic aspects. We kind of act on behalf of the seed companies, but as I say, our main role is the administration of this breeding and technology levy. Just to give you an idea, for every 100 rand of levy that we collect, 2.50 rand of that, or 2.5%, is used to pay the collectors of the levy, the people that do the service and collect the levy for us. We use 2.50 rand for that out of 100 rand. Another approximately 2 rand is used for SACTA costs, and then the balance is split. 20% goes to transformation, and what's left, the 80%, which is around 75, 76 rand, once you've done the maths, that goes back to the seed companies for their breeding programs. As I say, the crops and the levy amounts have changed over the years. The winter crops, we started off in around 2016 to 17, that first season, and the levy was 25 rand a ton. Currently, it's at 33 rand a ton. So every ton of grain, of wheat or barley or oats that gets delivered, 33 rand comes back to SACTA for each ton delivered. On the soybean side, just to mention that, the levy is a lot more expensive, or much higher, and that is 92 rand a ton. But the basic principle is to keep the cost of the levy below 1% of the commodity price. Again, we kind of try to measure ourselves on how good we are at collecting the levy, and our sort of general collection efficiency is around 90 to 95%. It varies from year to year. If we do very well one year, the year after that tends to be a little bit less, and that's because some of the levy gets recorded in the wrong year, so the one year looks better than the other one. But essentially we're around 95%, and it looks like we're actually getting better. The variation is coming closer and closer to 90%, both on 95%, both on soybeans and on the winter crops. Just to give you an idea of the size of the pool, it's this past season, both soybeans and the winter crops, we've collected just under 300 million rands, which, as I say, gets used for transformation, for sector costs, and the balance goes back to the seed companies. You can see our costs are made up of the 2.5% that we pay to the collectors, the commission. On the right-hand side, you can see that's a flat 2.5%. But our costs, sector's cost as a percentage of the gross levy collected does vary. And you can see over the past few years it's coming down, and it's below 2% now, or around 2%. And that's really a function of the size of the pool increasing. Our costs are going up, but as a percentage they are decreasing. We've made a lot of funding available to seed companies over the years. You can see that on the different screens, and you'll see this past season our soybean distribution was close to 150 million rands. In the previous seasons for winter crops, we've been around 65 million rands each year. So all of that, or a lot of that money then, or the majority of that money goes back to breeding programs. So it's important to have a look at the impact that SACTA has made. As I say, you can see on the left-hand side the amount of funding that's been made available for breeding and technology programs. And then at the bottom of the graph, you can see some of the measurements that we try to make. So those seed companies that received the funding, they have really come to the party. We've seen over 80 new soybean varieties coming to the market, being registered, and over 50 new wheat varieties. So that is kind of the major impact. We've also moved from being a soybean importing country to a soybean exporter. Last year, over 500,000 tons being exported. So this creates a market as well for the impact of the better genetics that we have out there. One thing that's been really interesting is to look at the rate of yield improvement. And BFAP recently, in a study of soybeans, wheat, and some of the other crops, had a look at our rate of yield improvement. And if you have a look on the right-hand graph there, you can see since the inception of SACTA, there have been more, the rate of new wheat variety releases has improved. And on the left-hand graph, it shows our sort of annual average yield improvement. And we are tracking actually better than most countries in the world. But again, it's only the last 5 years, which relates back to the SACTA implementation of the SACTA levies. So again, just some of the stuff that's out in the press, new bred wheat cultivars for the industry. The table on the right-hand side is very interesting because it shows 2 new seed companies that have come to the market. And I believe the SACTA levy delivers a certain amount of security and comfort to international seed companies and allows them to come to this country and make it worth their while to invest. So it's really good to see some new seed companies entering the wheat market in this country. Then just to touch very briefly on transformation, because this is a statutory levy, there's a requirement that 20% of the levy income must be allocated to transformation projects. We do this strictly in accordance with the NAMC, National Agricultural Marketing Council, guidelines for transformation. And over the past several years, we've done quite a lot. We're starting to become quite a player in this space. So since the fiscal year 21, we've made over 100 million rand available to enterprise development. This is mostly funding production loans of near commercial farmers. We've spent over 6 million rands on skills and training. This is mostly bursaries, postgraduate bursaries, as well as more recently some diploma students as well. And then on socio-economic stuff, we do a lot of ad hoc projects whose aim it is to improve life in rural areas. So we've been focusing on schools and providing good drinkable water at rural schools. And more recently, we are involved in a project to eradicate pit latrines at rural schools as well. And you can see the spend there is around 2 million rands so far. Then transformation management is paying for the costs of all of these. So we make use of service providers to help us with our enterprise development actions, and those service providers are paid a service fee, which comes out of transformation management. What that means is that the loan that is made, and it's a loan, not a grant, that's made to a farmer, he gets the full amount of that loan. There's not a percentage that needs to be paid for administration. That comes out of the transformation management. Then lastly, just to give you an idea of the kind of money we're spending on transformation expenditure, you can see this previous financial year we spent up to just over 60 million rand, most of that being in the enterprise development bucket. And our forecast for the coming season is a little bit reduced on the 61, and that's mostly because we estimate the crop is going to be smaller than in the previous season. And then lastly, if anybody is interested on our financial statements, they're welcome to have a look on our website at www.sactalevy.co.za. You'll find all our annual financial statements there. And if that's not enough, you're more than welcome to contact myself or Sandile at the email addresses shown at that point. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. I don't know if there are any questions at this point in time that relate to Andrew's presentation. Otherwise, I'd just like to ask you something, Andrew. How is the statutory levy on cereals benefiting farmers, especially here in the Western Cape? And I know cereals is a bit wide. The principal crop that we're talking about is wheat.
And barley, yeah. So again, as I mentioned earlier, through the distribution of the levy back to various seed companies, they have managed to register a considerable number of new varieties. And looking at the BFAP research, you can see since the inception of SACTA, the rate of new varieties being registered has gone up a lot. Not only that, I think we see also from the BFAP yield data analysis that they did, the rate of yield, average yield increase from year to year is also considerable. I know it's very difficult to relate that productivity directly to genetics. There are a lot of other factors like a good season or whatever that play a role. But that analysis was done over a 5-year period, and it shows that our wheat yields are increasing at a rate that's higher than the wheat yields are increasing in countries like Australia and the United States and South America. Whether all of that is to do with SACTA or not, I couldn't say, but I think we're certainly assisting and playing a role in enabling that. I think the flip side would be if there was not a SACTA levy, we would not see that. Yeah.
In your opinion, were we sort of getting with wheat? A few years ago, we were starting to hit a yield ceiling in the country?
Yeah, I think so. Wheat is a complicated product, and I don't want to speak outside of my knowledge sphere. Maybe Hendrik or Andries can come in, but we have very strict quality requirements in this country. So, as you know, yield and quality tend to be sort of inversely connected. If you have a good yield, your quality is bad, and if you have a good quality, your yield tends to come down. But I think so we're maintaining the quality in this country. That's non-negotiable, and yet the yields are increasing. So we are trying to, I think the activities of the breeding companies are finding that sweet spot, yeah.
Hendrik, maybe I can just ask you, as wheat breeder or the cereal breeding company, what the SACTA levy means to you guys in terms of your inputs into research, into the research effort, and maybe also just touching on the, you've always got the physical quality side, and you've got the genetic performance and quality side, and just maybe touching on that as well.
And thank you, Andrew. And I also want to relate to you, maybe some feedback from your question is, I think a very important thing is the number of varieties that we can put to the market, the portfolio that we have. I think that's important. I mean, the levies is really helping us to continue with that. So, Dion, I think that for me the most important thing is, with this endpoint royalty is the fact that we can continue with, let's say, with the breeding in South Africa with the stations that we have. Basically our varieties for South Africa. As you mentioned, Andrew, there's a lot of companies, multinationals that's also investing in South Africa because of this. This is a reality which is good, for competition in South Africa. Yeah, and we see good varieties also coming from them. But what we also see is very direct introductions in South Africa, but we still need to continue breeding in South Africa. And we all know it's very expensive. So this is a big value for us financial-wise. It helps us basically. The most important for us as well, based on that, is the number of data points that we can collect now. We can invest that money in a lot of more smaller plots and also more commercial plots on wheat specifically, to offer a better portfolio to farmers in certain segments. Previously, it was very difficult, and we know, within the farm safe seeds, with a high percentage that's on farms today. So that helps us a lot, and a big benefit for us is really to keep the seed prices, and we all know we have a lot of pressure, specifically on the commodity price of wheat today, is to keep the certified seed price as low as possible. We are all making, specifically our company is making very low margins on it, and we need to protect that as well. So, and also I think going forward for the value on this is, as you mentioned, is all the newcomers into the market, which is good to see what varieties and what technology they can bring for our farmers.
If I may come in there,
yes.
I was involved in another panel just before this one around research, and I think the very clear and unanimous conclusion was that you just have to maintain your research budgets. There's no alternative. And I think especially as we face climate change and changing environments, especially the research into developing new varieties that can handle these changes is going to be critical for South Africa.
And Dion, your second question on the, our quality, how do we think about it as a company? And it's quite expensive, but our big focus is still on bacon and milling quality. We will, that is the, let's say, the benchmark in the industry, because if we don't do it, everybody wants high yields. We can do it, but I think it's a balance. I think it's always that yield stability that we need, and also obviously everybody wants higher yields because that's where the profitability is. But again, if we're not going to continue to make sure that we get that quality wheat in the market, where we're going to sell it. So then the imports could be much cheaper, and we will really, I think then it will be more difficult for us to produce wheat in South Africa. So that's important for us. The quality will stay with that, and also, all the disease tolerances that we get today, and the stability of our varieties going forward.
Andries, dis maybe, ek dink jy's nou boer nou al jare in die Wes-Kaap. En ek dink is miskien goed om jou te vra. Jy weet, boere is altyd onder 'n kostedruk. En nou kry jy skielik 'n heffing wat ingestel word ook op die graangewasse. En dit is 'n statutêre heffing, so boere moet dit betaal. En ek dink die organisasies het dit almal ingekoop, en die boere het ingekoop om dit te doen, om nou navorsing veral te bevorder. Andries, dit loop nou al 'n hele tyd en jy is baie betrokke gewees. Hoe sien jy dit nou verloop, en hoe sien jy die voordele inkom as 'n boer?
Dit is 'n baie interessante konsep. Die vertrekpunt is dat in 2016 en 17 was die koringbedryf in die Weskaap op sy einde. Fisies. Die teelers het nie belang gestel in ons meer nie, en hulle het fisies na ons toe gekom en gesê, as gevolg van die farm safe seed of die plaas terughou saad, kan ons nie verder vir julle kultivar. So op daai stadium was daar net een maatskappy wat koring geteel het en hulle was totaal onwinsgewend. En ons moes gaan kyk na alternatiewe. En dis waar hierdie endpoint royalty, ons mag nie dit sê, die breeding and technology levy vandaan kom. Nou wil ek vir julle sê dat ek boer vir jou 40 jaar. En 40 jaar terug, as jy in die Swartland en in die Suid-Kaap 'n top opbrengs gehad het, was dit 1,8 ton hektar. Vandag, as ek terugkyk, dan wonder ek soms hoe het ons oorleef. Nou, as jy in die huidige omgewing waar jy nou sit, is 4,5 en 5 ton hektar vir koringopbrengste is eintlik enorm geraak. Dit gee vir jou die toevoeging van genetika, beter genetika en tegnologie. En dit verseker die voortbestaan van ons boerderye. Ek wil vir julle sê, onthou, ons kompeteer direk. Die koringbedryf in Suid-Afrika voer ons bykans 50% van ons koringverbruik in. My kompetisie is nie die Noord-Kaap en die Vrystaat boere nie. My kompetisie is 'n ou wat ergens in Rusland met koring boer of ergens in Oekraïne met koring boer. Dis my kompetisie. En die enigste manier aan prys kan ek niks doen nie. Dis 'n wêreldgegewe. Die enigste ding wat vir my kan volhoubaar bly hou op in die Swartland en in die Suid-Kaap en die Oeverberg in Suid-Afrika op 'n koringplaas is tegnologie, die verbeterde opbrengste. En dan vir ons as produsente se kant af is ons versoek baie groot aan ons koring. Kwaliteit verkoop homself. Moenie dat ons kwaliteit prys gee nie. Dat ons dit behou. Maar tesame daarmee, en ek dink die versoek deesdae is ons kyk so 'n bietjie na die vrystellingskriteria, dat as jy vir my 5% en 10% beter opbrengs gee, dan stel ek jou produk makliker vry. Maar anders gaan ons nie oorleef nie. Ons gaan nie oorleef nie. Dit is regtig. En ons kan verwys nou na die 4% groei jaar op jaar in die koringopbrengste en tegnologie. 80% daarvan is tegnologie en teling. 20% is klimaat en beter omgewings- en produksiepraktyke. Dis min of meer die verdeling. Die bottom line is, as dit nie was vir 'n SACTA-heffing nie, het ons bestaande Suid-Afrikaanse koringteelmaatskappye nie oorleef nie, was hulle nie hierso nie. En in die tweede plek, waar deel van ons fokus met die ding was, ons moet mense geïnteresseerd kry in Suid-Afrika. En ons het 2 nuwe koringteelmaatskappye betrokke, wat in Suid-Afrika ingekom het. En hulle sou nie, kom ek sê vir julle sou nie eens amper gekyk het na Suid-Afrika as ons nie 'n SACTA of 'n teling gehad het. Nie eens amper nie. En nou is hulle daarso. En nou gaan jy in my gebied ingaan, dan gaan jy eens vir jou sê, maar die terughou saad raak meer en al sulke dinge. Meneer, dit is jou keuse waar jy die saad verkoop. Ons het vir jou 4 nuwe vier maatskappye waarvoor jy keuse het. As jy nie tevrede is met die indruk nie, dan ga jy na Sandile toe. Dit is so die vrye mark werk. En ek dink op hierdie stadium funksioneer hy 100% baie effektief tot voor en absoluut tot voordeel van ons as produsente.
Ek dink dit is natuurlik ook belangrik met die koms van ander gewasse soos sojabone in groter dele van die land. Die Wes-Kaap se bydra tot koringproduksie proporsioneel baie belangriker geword. En as ons die opbrengste kan opkry, is dit 'n geweldige bydra tot voedselsekerheid vir die land en ook invoervervanging. So ek dink Andries, dis baie lekker om so positiewe antwoord te kry van jou af en ek is baie bly dat jy dit so ervaar. Sandile, I think one of the things that has also happened with the introduction of the statutory levy is that in terms of the NAMC guidelines, quite a proportion of that has got to go, in fact it's 20% after the costs, give or take, has to go to transformation spending. And Andrew has spoken a bit about that. And that is obviously to build the agricultural sector even bigger by bringing new farmers on board. And I'm not going to steal Sandile's thunder, but I actually would like to ask you, because guys have got different opinions on it, why do you see this as positive expenditure from a big picture perspective for South Africa and also for SACTA?
No, thanks, Dion. I think it becomes a big picture. One is the demand globally is increasing, and it's increasing, one, because of population growth in the country and globally. But secondly, we're seeing also the shift in terms of plant-based food. And we then bringing in this, with these new entrant farmers, they'll almost help also the commercial farmer to meet the demand first. Because one of the issues is most of the crop, I think, as Andres was saying, that the competition is not only with who you have around you, but as the political heads are trying to secure other markets for us. If we mess up a market because we can't meet the demand, we have already messed up for years. But if the more farmers we bring on board, then we I think also because we have funds that will help them produce at a good standards, and then it helps. And maybe while on that as well, what's very interesting with the farmers that we are assisting, it's the fact that they are also contributors to the levy. Every farmer who sells their grain, whether it's a new entrant or it's an old commercial farmer, they are charged the same price. And these farmers are also contributing, which help the seed companies, but as well, you're seeing that these are people who are also contributing and helping the economy, because now you realize the exchange of money, also helping the agri-businesses that they start to purchase more inputs from them. And one will say, as much as economics will say higher demand, it will affect the price, but also is an issue of if there are more customers, businesses start neutralizing or making sure that the prices is good. And we're hoping that seed companies as well, with these more new entrant farmers coming in, for them their profits will be good, of which it will also allow them to standardize their price and bring them down a bit. So, and then we can be able to supply all of those. And that is a benefit even for commercial farmers, because as the price reduces, it's not going to say it's only for a new entrant farmer, but it will say it's for farmers, all of them.
Thanks, Sandile. I think what is quite important, we've visited quite a few of the projects that we're involved in through cooperators. And I can say the enthusiasm and the quality of the projects, and not everything, but the quality of the projects that we're involved in, and they get quite carefully vetted, really gives one hope for exactly what Sandile is saying: bigger production for the country as a whole, more efficient utilization of our resources, and there is a lot of underutilized land in terms of potential in this country still. And if we can get that up, there's also regional food security in certain districts where these farmers are producing, where you can actually produce on site and you don't have to move the crops very far to actually get them to the consumer. So I think there's vast possibilities. Andrew was alluding to the exports on soybeans, and I think it's a vast market. If we export to China, for example, our exports there, even if we exported our entire crop, wouldn't even, I wonder if it would register on their state computers. But it's, in our terms, makes a huge difference to the country's balance of payments. It also just makes a huge difference to the farmers' profitability and their margins at the end of the day. So if we can become an appreciated, recognized exporter in some of our crops, it'll be absolutely fantastic on a more consistent basis. Andrew?
I think also to add on the transformation side, one of the things that I think SACTA does that's a little bit different is we're very flexible on what we think the farmers should be using the funding for. So many of the commodity trusts kind of specify that if we've collected the money on whatever citrus, this money needs to go back into citrus only. We've had a look at it, and many of the, I don't know what you call them, row crop farmers, they actually have a number of, the successful ones, they have a number of business units, could be some livestock, several crops, and so on. And so I think to expect a developing farmer to rely on a single commodity is a bit crazy. So in our funding model, we allow the farmers to rotate their crops. And I think this helps develop the farm and add value to the farm, replenishes the soil, especially when you're adding soybeans into the mix. I think that's something that would be quite good maybe if some of the other commodity trusts also looked into.
Andries.
Dion, ek wil net aansluit wat julle gesê het, Sandile en Andrew. Die realiteit is net dat ons as produsente wat betaal vir SACTA. Ons produseer 50% van die koring in Suid-Afrika. Jy weet, ons wil ook graag sien wat kom terug na ontwikkelende landbou in ons eie gebied. Die dilemma is wat jy in die uitdagings wat ons tans het, is dat as gevolg van die ontsettende lae winsmarges in die koringbedryf, maak dit vir 'n nuwe toetreder in die landbou of in die Weskaap bykans onmoontlik. Bykans onmoontlik. Dat die oliesade is in 'n groot mate baie meer winsgewend op hierdie stadium, so dit is die meer dis een waarna mense kyk. Die koringbedryf is die marges is baie dun en dit maak dit moeilik. Alhoewel ons hoe graag mense help om as kommersiële koringboere te vestig in die Weskaap, is die geleenthede net doodgewoon baie min. En die kompetisie in hierdie game is nogal groot, jy weet. En dit maak dit is 'n uitdaging vir ons.
Ons het ook gehoor vanoggend, veral in die Swartland, toe in die verlede boere, kommersiële boere het net koring geplant, maar nou begin hulle kyk na vee, kleinvee, en dit help om die hele boerdery volhoubaar en winsgewend te wees. En ek dink ons moet dieselfde benadering neem as dit kom by opkomende boere. Dit is onregverdig om te dink hy gaan winsgewend wees op een gewas nie.
Die boerdery moet jy holisties kyk na.
Ja, absoluut.
Die skape is daar, die beeste is daar, so dalk 'n paar varke en die koring. En op die einde van die dag gaan jy nie net koring plant, jy gaan canola plant, jy gaan opine plant, jy gaan haver en gas en sulke goed bybring in die stelsel. En dit is om het boerdery se hele pakkie. Dit is 'n hele holistiese benadering en ek dink van ons kant af is dit ons siening in 'n groot mate dit is julle siening hoe ons die goed benader.
Ek dink in ons gesprekke met die NIMC en ook die Landbank het ons juis gepraat oor 'n volhoubare model vir boere. Ek dink die een ding wat belangrik is uit die SACTA oogpunt is dat ons probeer 'n vakuum vul wat die boere miskien nie met 'n kommersiële, hulle het nie toegang tot kommersiële lenings op die oomblik nie as gevolg van die feit dat baie van hulle nie grond besit nie, maar grond huur. En daar vul ons nou 'n bietjie 'n gaping en ons gee ook vir hulle die terme wat ons hulle die lenings gee is rentevry vir 'n periode en dan probeer ons hulle nou op 'n skaal kry waar hulle dan hulle eie ek wil sê hulle eie krediet kan bekom. Maar dit is 'n proses wat 'n mens moet aanpasbaar wees en soos ons nou met ander medewerkers begin werk, moet mens by elke medewerker moet jy maar aanpas by die situasie en kyk hoe kan ons die beste resultaat op die einde van die dag kry. Hendrik, het jy iets om by te dra hier uit jou oogpunt uit?
Nee, ek dink dat daai selfde argument is by ons binne die maatskappy ook. Jy weet, ons het ook anders het net nou genoem van ons teelers, jy weet, ek dink dit is kritiek om vir ons hoop te gee. Ek weet ons weet dit vat 9-13 jaar om een produk van 'n teeler op die mark te bring, jy weet, so en om vir daai ook hoop te gee om te sê dat die industrie, iemand so SACTA ook na ons belange as organisasie kyk. Ons weet, ons het dit hoeveel keer gesê, ons is onderdruk, maar ek dink hierdie help ons regtig om vir ons nog steeds te motiveer en om 'n lang termynvisie te hê om seker te maak dat ons in die Suid-Afrikaanse mark bly en ook geleenthede soek vir uitvoere na Afrika toe.
Ja, ek dink dit is goed wat baie duidelik deurkom, jy weet, daar's 'n verskil in om 'n plaaslike teelprogram te hê teenoor, ek weet nie wat die Afrikaanse woord is, maar in Engels 'n screening program, waar jy variëteite van oorsee inkry en jy toets hulle hier en hierdie een werk 'n bietjie en daai een werk glad nie. Om 'n plaaslike teelprogram te dryf is van ongelooflike waarde vir 'n land. Ja.
En weer eens, die fooi wat ons terugkry, Andrew, is
Net 'n druppeltjie waarskynlik.
ja, maar dit help vir ons binne ons begrotings om seker te maak dat ons kan aanhou om te doen, want julle weet, navorsing is baie duur. Jy weet, ons weet wat is die kostes vandag en dit regtig help ons om nog steeds relevant te bly binne in die mark, om nog steeds daai momentum te bou. En as ons nie daai voordeel gaan kry of daai investment gaan terugkry nie, gaan dit baie moeilik vir ons wees. Ons gaan eintlik stagneer in die hele koringbedryf, en ek praat uit ons maatskappy se oogpunt uit, en praat nie net uit die Wes-Kaap nie. Droland is onder baie groot druk wat dit reeds is. Dis baie moeilik om 'n klomp geld in te sit in navorsing in binne die Droland gebiede. Ons kan dit sien, dit word al hoe kleiner want daar's al hoe groot druk, en natuurlik omstandighede, weeromstandighede speel ook 'n groot rol. En ons sien dit natuurlik in die besproeiing ook, jy weet, wat ons vandag daar sien, maar ons hou aan met daai, jy het nou gesê van die opbrengste verhogings. Ons sien dit in die laaste 3-4 jaar met ons eie data. Weet, dit is asof dit so groot sprong maak, en dit het ons gehelp om baie meer, kom ons sê, datapunte by mekaar te kry om weer geleenthede om boere te kan verduidelik, en wat ons kan sien wat ons kultivars en ons genetika doen in sekere gebiede.
Ja, ek dink ons moet die boere ook komplementeer om so versiende te wees as om in te stem vir so 'n levy of heffing, is die regte woord. En ek, ja, dis nie dalk altyd so obvious wat die voordele is in terme van opbrengs, maar oor 'n tydperk dan is daar 'n momentum wat in die regte rigting gaan. En my vraag is altyd, wat sou gebeur as dit nie daar was, as daai plaaslike telingprogram nie daar was? Ek dink Andries het verwys daarna, en jy weet, as jy dink aan al die addisionele, ek weet nie, skakels in die waardeketting, sê maar rondom koring, die stroopers, as al daai weg is, dis nie net die boere wat weg is, al daai ander besighede wat ook weg is. So,
dit was eintlik baie verblydend vanoggend toe die minister van Landbou nou ook gepraat het oor navorsing. Oor landbounavorsing uit 'n, ek wil sê uit 'n regerings- of uit 'n staatsoogpunt of uit 'n provinsiale oogpunt. En dit is ongelukkig een ding wat nou Wes-Kaap miskien uitgesluit, maar in die ander provinsies bietjie agterweeg gebly het die afgelope jare. En ek dink as ons dit alles kan opkry, dat daar goeie samewerking is tussen jou privaat navorsing en jou staatsnavorsing. Want die staat in hierdie land het oor jare geweldig goeie navorsing gedoen. En as ons dit weer op 'n vlak kan kry waar daar navorsing gedoen word wat relevant is en waardevol is, en ek wil sê aansluiting vind or dovetail with the research done by the private companies, so that they're not in conflict, they actually complement one another. Dit sal 'n groot stap vorentoe wees. En ek wil miskien ook net, ons het so 'n bietjie gepraat, vat ook net bietjie aan die navorsers, en ek dink om hulle in die land te hou, en jy weet, om meer navorsers te hê. En Sandile, maybe you just want to touch on the legs of your transformation program, and particularly the student support that we give.
Yes, with that, Dion, I think what Andrew has mentioned, we mainly focus on postgraduate degrees, but in the plant, and also we want a student to work on these crops that levy is collected on. And with that, we also believe that as this research are being released, it creates a pipeline. It's either for the state to continue on those research, but the results are also very impactful towards farmers. And our hope and our plea is also to farmers that if they can constantly suggest some of those things, that these are issues, or they foresee this will be issues, so we can recommend also to students. But that's what we do. The other aspect we do is on the TVET, we're trying to do in-service training. So the TVET students, because we believe that in terms of technician, you will definitely need that, but also there can be future farmers as well. And we're also pleading to farmers, say, if you want to host a student, we are also, I think it's that. And one, maybe before I even conclude, Dion, is to assure farmers that we're trying by all means to make sure that farmers that are selected or students that are selected are people who can be able to assist us achieve the mandate. And we know that we're acting on behalf of seed companies, but it's a money that has been paid by farmers, so we're trying by all means to be responsible on how we spend those funds.
I think, Zandila, that one operation that we're supporting, that is actually also training students to actually in grain handling and grain quality. And this is I'll call him a farmer. He farms in his own right, but he's taken upon himself to actually assist young people, to actually further their practical knowledge of the grain industry so that they can actually find jobs. Because you often come out of a university with a degree, and now you float around. And we're very enthused by the work he's doing, and on Sandila's recommendation, we're actually supporting him to an extent on that as well. So that type of thing is where I think we can all make a difference to the country going forward.
Yeah, ultimately, as I always say, and probably people are very tired of hearing this, we have a population of around 60 million people today. In 20, 25 years' time, we'll have a population of 120 million people. Who's going to produce the food? We need more farmers.
Ja.
Die voorzitter, of die lekker is ons wat 'n bietjie langer in hierdie hele proses besig is. Ons het begin met baie van ons boere wat ons begin ondersteun het was ou mense. Ja. Met alle eerbied en respek. Ek sê dit nou versigtig want ons val baie na in dieselfde kategorie. Maar was ouer mense gewees wat tradisionele boere was. Ja. En dit was baie moeilik om hulle te speen van hierdie ondersteuning. Jy moet aanhou. Van die nuwe geslag boere wat inkom, die jonger ouens, is ek dood eerlik, ek dink hulle is beter opgewasse daarvoor, hulle is beter opgelei, hulle is daai studente wat terugkom van die universiteit af. En dis die mense, dink ek, wat die verskil gaan maak aan die pad vorentoe. Ja, ons kan maar kyk, ons suksesverhale is jonger ouens wat jy vir 'n tydperk ondersteun en dan sê ook kommersiële boer. En nie maklik nie, maar die geleentheid is daar so. Ek is baie opgewonde oor 'n nuwe jonger geslag mense wat die geleentheid kry om in die proses betrokke te kan raak.
Excellent.
Ja, ek dink ek wil ook net aansluit daar. Ek sit net te dink, ons kom op soveel plase, by soveel boere, klein boere, kommersiële boere. Die produsente, ek sit nou dink daaraan, daar's werklik nooit 'n gesprek wat ons oor hierdie fooi oor praat op plaasvlak. Wat boere is net ondersteunend van dit en ek dink hulle sien die langtermyn waarde binne in dit en die volhoubaarheid van sedels of kom ons sê dit maar verkoring. So nee, ek dink is baie positief en ek ons kan baie dankbaar ook wees vir hulle kant af en ons sien baie energie. Vir my is dit nooit 'n gesprek op plaasvlak nie maar ek dink wat ons verseker moet doen is hierdie suksesse wat ons het, moet ons meer oor vertel. Ek weet dit is tog die produsent op die dag wat wel die produk koop en ons doen dit vir die produsent en ook vir ons as besighede om volhoubaar te bly, maar ek dink ons kry baie goeie terugvoer van ons produsent af in 'n baie positiewe.
Baie dankie. Ja.
Andries, net oor navorsing, Dion, ek dink ook jy het baie vinnig geraak aan wat ons gehad het met die LNR en die navorsing wat daar gedoen word. Ek dink net dat in enige normale land soos Suid-Afrika is voedselsekerheid moet vir die regering van die dag ook belangrik wees. En daar sekere basiese navorsing wat ek persoonlik dink die staat se verantwoordelikheid is. En wat hulle vir ons die basiese navorsing moet doen en waarvan die inligting terugkom na ons teelers toe. Dit is goed wat ek as produsent nie kan befonds. Ek het doodgewoon net nie genoeg geld daarvoor nie. En in enige land as jy nou Australië toe gaan of jy gaan Kanada toe of waar ook al, is daar sekere goed, basic research, wat uit daai bron uitbefonds word. En ek sal graag wil hê dat ons van SACTA kant af ook, en ek weet ons ondersteun die mense, ons is nie 'n vyandskap met die LNR of die mense nie, maar ek dink ook daar's 'n rol wat hulle moet speel om van hierdie goed te doen. En die Weskaapers is miskien baie gelukkig met 'n funksionele departement landbou, wat baie van hierdie navorsing en produksiepraktyke goed vir ons doen. Ek is jammer vir die res van die land wat dit nie het nie, want hierdie ouens is heeltemal aan boord en hulle vat die leiding en hulle gee vir ons goed terug. Maar dit is ook belangrik dat ons met die gesprekke wat jy met die minister en die mense het, vir hulle beklemtoon dat daar sekere navorsing wat op hulle vlak is. Gaan haal dit in die wêreld, julle toegang daartoe, Summit, waar ook al die goed vandaan kom, bring dit vir Suid-Afrika toe en maak dit beskikbaar vir ons plaaslike teelers.
Ja, Andries, ek dink daar's geweldige uitdagings, maar
Ja.
ek kry die gevoel dat daar gewilligheid is, en miskien is dit iets wat na die verkiesing gebeur het, maar dit in die hele land kan jy sien daar's 'n nuwe gees van, ek wil sê, opgewondenheid en
Ja.
selfs daar by ons waar daar ons so agterstand het op partygebiede soos paaie, word daar paaie reggemaak en daar word infrastruktuur reggemaak en die ouens begin nou bekommerd raak oor die hawens en jy weet, ek dink dis alles goeie tekens en ek dink dieselfde gaan gebeur met landbou. Ek dink almal is opgewonde gewees oor die besoek aan China en die geleenthede wat daar gaan wees en ek weet een van die dinge wat die minister blykbaar op gefokus het is om van die, ek wil sê die beperkings wat daar nog bestaan op die invoer van goedere tussen die lande, om dit aan te spreek. En dis gewoonlik fitosanitêre beperkings en daai tipe van ding. En dis maar net 'n geval van jy moet die bul by die horings pak en jy moet daai goed aanspreek. Jy kan dit nie agterweer laat bly of uitstel nie. Hoe gouer jy begin, hoe gouer kry jy die resultate op die einde van die dag vir almal. So ek is opgewonde daaroor. Sandile, if you look your time in agriculture, I mean, you're one of the youngsters that we're talking about. Now, are you optimistic when you see the young farmers, and particularly the young black farmers, coming into the business?
Yeah, I am, Dion, and there are good stories. I think usually in the country the problem is we overshadow the good stories with all the bad. There's young, good farmers who are there, but definitely they need the support, and we need to be patient, especially with these new entrant farmers. Our support need to definitely understand that it's a learning curve. Agriculture is not an overnight thing, and we also, I think one of the things what Andries and Andrew have been emphasizing, we need to stop looking at the farmer when we get in just on one aspect. We're supposed to kind of approach it with a holistic approach, change the mindset, and teach also on financial literacy and other issues. But the future is bright.
Yeah.
And we have quality farmers who are already on the pipeline, and we're seeing the interest as well. We are hoping as well to bring more women into the mainstream in terms of grain production as well.
It is quite something, and especially in our part of the world, the women are very good farmers. They're the ones that are actually working in the fields.
Yes.
It's something that you see in other parts of Africa too. I can remember going to Kenya,
It's mainly
Zambia. Kenya, a lot of women would actually do these speciality crops like coffee.
yes.
They'd be doing that, and the men would be focused more on the cattle, and they would do the coffee, they'd do the maize and a few other things. And so I agree with you. I think there's a lot of potentials, and we saw it at some of the projects that we visited, how involved the ladies are in the actual
Yes, they are.
business. Thanks, guys. Is there anything else? Is julle reg?
On our side,
Oh,
have some questions.
That is allowed.
it is allowed.
Sandile, a question for you. There are so many transformation initiatives nationally that fall short of lofty goals for a number of complex reasons. What is your benchmark for successful, long-lasting transformation projects? Because I think in the measuring and the reporting, you can do a lot to put farmers at ease that the levies you are collecting are being implemented and reinvested into the future of agriculture, not only with passion and dedication, but with the right priorities in mind.
I think one that we pride ourselves is that all of our farmers that we are supporting, they're delivering on a formal market. There's none that have not secured a market. and they are getting good prices, of which it's also a challenge in the country where transformation farmers, they don't receive the commercial price. But we pride ourselves with that, and also it's because, and we need to be honest with everyone, that the space is complex. It's a journey that we're walking, and what we have done on our side is also to measure the progress than to look at the end. One thing that we're doing is we're trying always to say to our service providers, make sure that the guy progress and make sure that we don't over-indebt the farmer. That's one of the things we don't want. We want to leave a farmer better. And we have also shifted in terms of we need to work with a farmer who can handle whatever that we are giving, of which it has driven us not to focus on the land size, but to focus on the quality and have a steady growth with a farmer. Because when you look into the stats of DTI, it shows that most of these SMME actually collapse when they're supposed to grow. When they reach a growth point where demand is increasing, that's when they fall. And it's one of the main reasons that our steady growth kind of help, because you're teaching a farmer. One of our measure of success is the consistency in terms of the yield. And one of the service providers is actually focusing on that. They say, as much as you're making profit, but we want you to be able to maintain those yields. And that for us, it says that means over years you'll be able to get closer to the commercial yields.
The impact soya had on so many farmers is a story in itself. But part of research and the work that the SACTA levy also does is to unlock future insights for farmers. Do you have any hints for farmers of things, of areas where huge future potential lies? Because we see so many times where a farmer needs to pivot really quickly into perhaps even another grain or a commodity to be able to remain sustainable or weather a particularly difficult year. Maybe just share some insights on ongoing research with us.
Sure. Who wants to take that one? So, yeah, I don't know that I have a full answer for you, but certainly, again, as we indicated earlier, I believe that the levy creates an environment where multinational companies are comfortable in investing in South Africa. And particularly on the soybean side, and I think we can safely say that without the levy, the two new technologies that have been approved, one is commercial, one is not commercial yet, but they would not have seen the light of day in this country at all. And then added to that, we actually have a third technology that has been tested and is awaiting approval. So essentially, I think the impact on that portion of productivity, the sector impact has been there. Yeah, I think going forward, it's going to enable us to be able to react quickly, as you say. And I think climate change is an interesting phenomenon. If we look at the soybean in particular, you guys probably know more than I do, but it was incredible to see. In the past, basically the eastern part of the country was the main soybean production area. The past couple of years, it's been the Free State that's produced the most soybeans. That's also an area that was traditionally more wheat and wheat and maize, and now it's been replaced by soybean and maize. So the new varieties that are coming out are giving farmers additional choices in different parts of the country. And as we always say, I think the farmers in this country are an incredible breed. They know how to adapt, but they do need the tools to be able to make those adaptations. And so research is vital in giving those tools so that farmers can adapt and remain successful, and the country can remain food secure. So it's a good story.
Thank you.
Don't know if anybody else has anything to add to that.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Just maybe add, Andrew, the value that soybeans, being able to expand them over the country, have brought to farmers.
Yeah,
It was rotating with maize.
adding.
they've actually had a positive effect on the maize yields,
Yeah.
which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
really something that will also transfer to our smaller farmers.
Intangible benefit.
A very tangible benefit, and we're looking for a crop like that for the Western Cape, and Andres.
Dion, we actually got it.
We've got it.
We got it. But we currently, you're asking about, and we're talking about wheat, and you see more and more yellow fields out there.
Yep.
And canola is giving us alternative. Actually, viable alternatives, as far as I know, in recent days, just past days, there's another boat of canola going out of the country, mostly to Europe. And so this alternative, currently in the northern part of the northern irrigation areas next to the Honest River from Hopetown and those areas, we've got a challenge with wheat. It's not a profitable crop anymore because of fusarium and those are diseases. But what we see in the new varieties that's been put forward, you see that guys are looking at fusarium resistance, or more, not resistance, but more tolerance, and you see alternatives coming very quickly into the market. So the research is going on. I think our breeders are focusing on the challenges currently, but fortunately we do have the alternatives in that crop rotation system, and I think the northern part of the country can come and learn from us in regards to crop rotations and conservation agriculture. So yeah,
Sure.
but it is going on, especially in the wheat. And it's very positive. In the recent, just a week ago, 40 days ago, we've actually seen the new varieties that's put in the market, and it's positive that what we see in there, not only in yield, but also in resistance to disease and stuff like that.
Thanks, Andres. And on that note, I think we're running out of time. So I'd like to thank the panel, and I'd like to thank everybody who's contributed. Thanks for the organisers. Very professionally done as always, Grand Republic, and and we look forward to the next session.
Keep watching this
Thank you.
place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.